Atlantis begins with a disappearance. Not a ruin uncovered beneath the sea. Not a city found under coral. Not a golden empire waiting in silence at the bottom of the Atlantic. It begins with a story told in a room in ancient Greece. A story about a powerful island kingdom, larger than imagination, richer than any city, protected by rings of land and water, ruled by kings who believed their power would last forever. Then, in a single terrible moment, the island vanished. The sea swallowed it. Its temples, harbors, armies, palaces, and memories were gone. And for more than 2,000 years, one question has refused to die. What if Atlantis was never the civilization most people imagine? Most people picture Atlantis as a lost utopia. A shining world of advanced knowledge, crystal towers, perfect cities, and secrets too powerful for history to preserve. In modern imagination, Atlantis is almost never just a place. It is a promise. A belief that somewhere beneath the waves, humanity's forgotten beginning is still waiting. But the oldest Atlantis is stranger than that. Because the first known account of Atlantis does not come from a sailor, an explorer, an inscription, or an archaeological report. It comes from Plato. A philosopher. And that changes everything. The story appears in two of Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written in the 4th century BC. In them, Atlantis is described as an island power beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the ancient gateway we now associate with the Strait of Gibraltar. It was said to have ruled a vast empire, challenged ancient Athens, and then disappeared beneath the sea after earthquakes and floods. Plato's Timaeus presents the story as something passed from Egyptian priests to Solon, and then through generations until it reaches Critias, the speaker in Plato's dialogue. That chain of transmission is important. Because it sounds like history. An Egyptian priest. A famous Athenian lawgiver. A story preserved from deep antiquity. But Plato was not writing like a modern historian. He was writing philosophy through dialogue, using stories to explore power, virtue, order, decline, and the ideal state. Atlantis appears not as an isolated travel report, but inside a philosophical conversation about societies, morality, and the dangers of corruption. So from the very beginning, Atlantis stands in two worlds. It is presented like an ancient memory. But it behaves like a warning. And perhaps that is the first secret. Atlantis may not have been invented to show humanity what it lost. It may have been created to show what power becomes when it forgets its limits. Picture ancient Athens in Plato's time. The city was no longer the confident power it had once been. It had lived through war, political struggle, defeat, ambition, and disillusionment. Athens had seen what happens when a city believes its own glory is permanent. It had seen democracy, empire, naval power, disaster, and decline. Then Plato tells a story. Not about Athens as it was. But about an ancient Athens that stood pure, disciplined, brave, and morally strong. Across from it, he places Atlantis. Huge. Wealthy. Technologically impressive. Militarily powerful. But slowly corrupted. At first, Plato's Atlantis is not evil. It is extraordinary. Its founders are connected to Poseidon. Its lands are fertile. Its architecture is magnificent. Its kings rule from a central island surrounded by circular rings of water and land. The city is ordered, rich, and almost impossible to attack. Then something changes. The divine nature of its rulers begins to fade. Human greed grows stronger. Power becomes hunger. Wealth becomes arrogance. The civilization that once seemed blessed becomes dangerous. And then it falls. This is why Atlantis is so easy to misunderstand. Because modern audiences often focus on the catastrophe. The sinking island. The vanished civilization. The underwater ruins we hope someone will find. But Plato's real drama may not be the flood. It may be the moral collapse before the flood. Atlantis does not fall simply because the earth shakes. It falls because it becomes unworthy of its own greatness. That is not archaeology. That is philosophy. And yet, the story has always felt too detailed to dismiss completely. Plato gives measurements. He describes harbors, canals, temples, metals, kings, armies, sacred laws, and the layout of the city. In Critias, Atlantis is not a vague mythic island. It is described almost like a place someone once walked through. That detail is what keeps the mystery alive. If Plato wanted only a simple moral fable, why give Atlantis such a physical body? Why describe its geography? Why connect it to Egypt? Why place it beyond a known boundary of the Greek world? Why make it feel like a memory? There are two careful answers. One scholarly interpretation is that Plato created Atlantis as a literary and philosophical invention. In this view, Atlantis is a mirror held up to Athens, a story designed to explore ideal society, corruption, and imperial ambition. It is not a lost continent. It is a warning shaped like one. Another interpretation is more open. Plato may have invented the final form of Atlantis, but he may have drawn inspiration from real events, real disasters, and real civilizations known through older stories. A volcanic eruption. A destroyed island. A Bronze Age society. A memory carried across generations until it became myth. This second possibility does not prove Atlantis existed. But it asks a powerful question. What if Atlantis was not one place? What if it was a story built from several ancient fears? The fear of the sea. The fear of earthquakes. The fear of powerful cities collapsing. The fear that even the richest civilization can vanish so completely that later generations argue whether it ever existed at all. Because the ancient Mediterranean knew disasters. Cities fell. Coastlines changed. Earthquakes destroyed temples. Floods swallowed settlements. Volcanoes darkened skies. Powerful kingdoms rose, traded, fought, and disappeared. To the Greeks, the sea was not only a road. It was a living danger. It brought wealth, but also storms, invaders, and mystery. Islands could seem safe, but they were never separate from catastrophe. And somewhere in that world, there was one civilization that looked more like Atlantis than almost any other. Not because it was Atlantis. Because it proves that the ancient world could create something dazzling, maritime, wealthy, artistic, and vulnerable. The Minoans. Long before classical Athens, the Minoan civilization flourished on Crete and nearby islands. It built palaces, created vivid frescoes, traded across the sea, and developed a culture so different from later Greece that when archaeologists began uncovering it, it seemed almost like a lost world. Modern summaries of the Atlantis question often point to the Minoans and the eruption of Thera, the volcano at Santorini, as one of the most influential real-world inspirations proposed for Plato's story. But here, we must be careful again. The Minoans were real. Santorini's eruption was real. The destruction and disruption in the Bronze Age Aegean were real. But the identification of Atlantis with the Minoans is a theory. A fascinating theory. Not a proven answer. Still, imagine what later Greeks might have inherited as legend. Stories of a sea power before their time. Stories of palaces on islands. Stories of a world linked by ships. Stories of a catastrophic eruption so violent that it changed landscapes, damaged settlements, and left ash across the region. Stories of a civilization that did not vanish in a single magical moment, but changed, weakened, and transformed until its old form was gone. Now imagine those memories traveling through time. Becoming compressed. Becoming moralized. Becoming larger than life. By the time they reach Plato, they are no longer only memories of an eruption or an island culture. They have become Atlantis. And this is where the mystery becomes deeper than a sunken city. If Atlantis was inspired by something real, then finding it may not mean finding one circular capital beneath the ocean. It may mean tracing the broken reflection of many ancient events inside one unforgettable story. A real island. A real disaster. A real fear. A real warning. All fused into a myth so powerful that people are still searching for it. But before Atlantis can be placed in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, the Sahara, or anywhere else, we have to enter the world that may have given Plato his most haunting image. An island civilization of sea roads, painted palaces, sacred bulls, and sudden ruin. A civilization that did not look like the Atlantis of fantasy, but may have carried the closest historical echo of its fall. A civilization that did not look like the Atlantis of fantasy, but may have carried the closest historical echo of its fall. The Minoan world does not begin with ruins. It begins with color. Walls painted with dolphins, dancers, lilies, ships, and bulls. Courtyards open to the sky. Palaces not built like fortresses, but like living centers of ritual, storage, ceremony, trade, and power. On Crete, the sea was not a border. It was a road. The Minoans did not leave us a clear written history we can read like a Greek chronicle. Their scripts, especially Linear A, remain undeciphered. So much of their world must be reconstructed from archaeology, art, architecture, trade goods, and the traces left behind in broken rooms. That makes them feel close and unreachable at the same time. We can see their paintings. We can walk through their palace corridors. We can hold the objects they left behind. But we cannot fully hear their voice. And maybe that silence is why they fit so naturally into the Atlantis mystery. They were real, but incomplete. Brilliant, but partially hidden. Powerful, but vulnerable to forces larger than any kingdom. Crete sat at the center of a maritime network. Minoan influence reached across the Aegean. Their ships moved goods, images, symbols, and ideas between islands and coasts. They lived in a world shaped by water, and like Atlantis, their power was connected to the sea. But the most haunting part of the Minoan story lies north of Crete, on the island now known as Santorini. In the Bronze Age, it was Thera. And Thera was not just an island. It was a volcano. Sometime in the 2nd millennium BC, the volcano erupted with extraordinary violence. The eruption buried the settlement of Akrotiri under volcanic material, preserving buildings, wall paintings, pottery, and signs of a sophisticated Aegean town. Archaeology has revealed a place frozen not by myth, but by ash. The eruption itself is widely recognized as one of the major volcanic events of the ancient Mediterranean. Picture Akrotiri before the eruption. Narrow streets. Multi-story houses. Painted rooms. Ships in the harbor. People living on an island that must have seemed prosperous, connected, and alive. Then the earth began to change. Tremors. Warnings. Smoke. A mountain becoming unstable. Unlike Pompeii, Akrotiri has not produced the same kind of human remains trapped in the final moment, which may suggest people had warning and escaped before the final burial. But the city itself was covered, sealed, and forgotten for thousands of years. A thriving island settlement swallowed by catastrophe. It is not difficult to see why some people hear the echo of Atlantis. An island. A rich maritime culture. A sudden natural disaster. A memory of destruction. A world hidden beneath layers until archaeology brought it back into light. But the theory has problems. And the problems matter. Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Heracles. Santorini is in the Aegean, not beyond Gibraltar. Plato described Atlantis as a vast power older than known Greek history by thousands of years. The Minoan world belongs to the Bronze Age, much closer to the civilizations archaeologists can study. Plato's Atlantis fights ancient Athens, but the Athens of the time described by Plato does not match what we know archaeologically about the distant past. So Santorini is not Atlantis in any simple sense. The Minoans do not perfectly match Plato's story. No inscription has been found saying, "This was Atlantis." No underwater capital with concentric rings has been confirmed beneath the Aegean. The Minoan theory is not proof. It is a possible inspiration. And that difference is everything. Because if Atlantis was inspired by real memories, those memories did not need to match Plato's account perfectly. Stories change when they travel. Disasters become larger. Dates stretch. Locations shift. Moral lessons attach themselves to older events. A volcanic eruption can become a divine punishment. A damaged civilization can become a vanished empire. A real island can become a symbol. And that may be what happened. The Minoans may not be Atlantis. But they show us that the ancient world contained pieces from which an Atlantis story could be built. Sea power. Island wealth. Sacred bulls. Palatial centers. Sudden destruction. A civilization remembered through fragments. Still, not everyone looks to the Aegean. Some search west. Because Plato said Atlantis lay beyond the pillars of Heracles, and for many readers, that points directly to the Atlantic Ocean. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. Literally. Beyond Gibraltar. Past the edge of the Mediterranean world. Out into the great unknown sea. For centuries, that phrase has pulled explorers, writers, and theorists toward the Atlantic. Some imagined Atlantis near the Azores. Others saw clues in the Canary Islands, Madeira, or submerged landforms beneath the ocean. The very name, Atlantis, seems to invite the Atlantic connection. But here again, evidence becomes difficult. Modern geology does not support the idea that a vast continent sank in the middle of the Atlantic in human history. Ocean floors do not hide a recently vanished landmass the size Plato described. Plate tectonics, seafloor mapping, and marine geology have made the old idea of a sunken Atlantic continent extremely unlikely. That does not stop the search. Because Atlantis has never survived only on evidence. It survives on possibility. The Atlantic theory gives Atlantis scale. It places the lost island at the edge of the ancient Greek imagination, in waters that felt vast, dangerous, and unknowable. To the Greeks, the pillars of Heracles marked a boundary between the familiar and the mysterious. And Atlantis belongs perfectly at a boundary. But other theories pull the island back into the Mediterranean. Some place Atlantis near southern Spain, around the region of Tartessos, an ancient culture known from Greek and Roman references and associated with wealth, trade, and the far west. Others point to marshlands, drowned coastal zones, or areas near the mouth of the Guadalquivir River. The attraction is obvious. This region lies closer to the beyond the pillars description, while still remaining connected to the Mediterranean world Plato knew. Again, the evidence is not decisive. Ancient Tartessos was real as a cultural and historical subject, but identifying it with Atlantis is interpretation, not established fact. Then there are theories in North Africa. Some have looked to Morocco. Others to Tunisia. Some point to ancient coastlines, circular formations, or desert regions that once may have been wetter. One popular modern claim focuses on the Rikhat structure in Mauritania, sometimes called the Eye of the Sahara, because its circular rings remind people of Plato's description of Atlantis. But geologists recognize the Rikhat structure as a natural formation, not the ruins of a lost city. Its resemblance to Atlantis is visually intriguing, but visual resemblance is not archaeological evidence. Other theories go even farther. Atlantis has been placed near the Caribbean, Antarctica, Britain, Indonesia, the Black Sea, the Americas, and almost anywhere a vanished land, flood story, or ancient mystery can be found. The more locations appear, the stranger the mystery becomes. Because if Atlantis can be anywhere, perhaps we are no longer looking for Plato's Atlantis. We are looking for something else. A shape the human imagination keeps placing over the unknown. A lost world beneath the sea. A destroyed civilization before our own. A warning that greatness can disappear. A hope that forgotten knowledge might still be recovered. This is why Atlantis survives even when theories fail. Every proposed location answers a different emotional need. The Atlantic gives us mystery at the edge of the world. Santorini gives us archaeology and catastrophe. Spain gives us a bridge between Plato's geography and real ancient cultures. North Africa gives us ancient landscapes transformed by climate and time. Alternative locations give us the thrill that history may have missed something enormous. But none of them has solved the mystery. Not completely. And maybe that is because the greatest clue is not a place. It is the reason Plato told the story at all. If Atlantis was only a memory of a disaster, why does Plato make it morally corrupt? If it was only a fictional warning, why does he give it so much physical detail? If it was only an invented enemy of Athens, why has it felt real to so many people for so long? The answer may lie not beneath the ocean, but inside the ancient Greek mind. Because Plato was writing after a time of war, ambition, imperial pride, and collapse. He knew what power could do to a city. He knew how wealth could become arrogance. He knew how societies tell themselves they are chosen, until disaster proves otherwise. Atlantis, in that sense, may not be a lost paradise. It may be the memory of every civilization that believed it could not fall. And that is why the next part of the mystery is the most unsettling. Even if Atlantis was never one real island, it may still be one of the truest stories the ancient world ever told. Even if Atlantis was never one real island, it may still be one of the truest stories the ancient world ever told. Because Atlantis is not only a mystery about geography. It is a mystery about memory. For more than 2,000 years, people have searched for Atlantis as if Plato left behind a treasure map with missing pieces. They have followed the pillars of Heracles into the Atlantic. They have studied islands in the Aegean. They have looked beneath coastlines, inside marshes, across deserts, and under oceans. But every search runs into the same wall. The evidence never becomes enough. There are real ancient disasters. Real drowned settlements. Real volcanic eruptions. Real civilizations that rose, flourished, and fell. There are real archaeological discoveries that show the ancient world was more complex than people once believed. Akrotiri was buried beneath volcanic ash. Minoan Crete revealed palaces, art, trade, and maritime power. Ancient Spain and North Africa held cultures that connected the Mediterranean to lands beyond Greek certainty. Modern underwater archaeology has found submerged settlements in many parts of the world, proving that coastlines have changed and human places have been lost to rising seas. But none of this has confirmed Plato's Atlantis as a real historical empire. No tablet. No inscription. No city with Plato's exact plan. No agreed archaeological site that matches the account in all major details. That is the established evidence. Atlantis, as Plato described it, has not been found. And yet it refuses to disappear. That is the strange part. A false story usually weakens with time. Atlantis grew stronger. The farther we moved from Plato, the more Atlantis expanded. It became a lost continent. Then a forgotten mother civilization. Then a symbol of ancient technology. Then a warning about destruction. Then a dream of spiritual wisdom. Then an obsession for explorers, writers, mystics, archaeologists, filmmakers, and ordinary people staring at maps of the sea. Each age created the Atlantis it needed. The Greeks saw a warning about power. Later writers saw a vanished world. The modern imagination saw a civilization more advanced than our own. And today, Atlantis survives because it asks a question that history can never fully close. What if something important happened before the records begin? That question is dangerous when it becomes careless. It can lead people to ignore evidence, reject archaeology, or turn myths into fake certainty. It can take real achievements from real ancient civilizations and give them to imaginary lost masters. It can make mystery feel more important than truth. But when handled carefully, the question is also valuable. Because history is incomplete. Not because scholars are hiding the truth. Because time destroys. Wood rots. Coastlines shift. Libraries burn. Languages are forgotten. Cities are rebuilt over older cities. Floods bury settlements. Earthquakes break walls into nameless stone. The past does not preserve itself for us. It leaves fragments. And we build from them. This is why Atlantis sits so perfectly between myth and archaeology. It reminds us that the ancient world was filled with catastrophes that could become stories. A real eruption could become divine punishment. A real war could become a cosmic conflict. A real island culture could become a drowned empire. A real moral fear could become a civilization swallowed by the sea. Plato may have invented Atlantis. He may have shaped it from older memories. He may have used real geographical rumors, Egyptian prestige, Aegean catastrophe, and Greek political anxiety to create one unforgettable warning. We cannot say for certain. But we can say what Atlantis does. It turns civilization into a question. What makes a society great? Its wealth? Its cities? Its ships? Its gods? Its laws? Or its ability to remain human when power becomes enormous? In Plato's story, Atlantis does not fall because it is weak. It falls because it becomes too powerful without wisdom. That may be why the story survived. Because every civilization fears the same ending. To build so high that collapse becomes invisible. To grow so rich that humility disappears. To mistake success for permanence. Atlantis is haunting because it is not only about the past. It is about any society that believes disaster belongs only to other people. This is why the search for Atlantis may never truly end. Even if archaeologists prove that one proposed location cannot be Atlantis, another will appear. Even if geology rules out a sunken continent, people will search for a smaller island. If the Atlantic fails, they will look in the Mediterranean. If the sea gives no answer, they will turn to deserts, marshes, mountains, and ancient symbols. Because the search is not only for a place. It is for a missing beginning. A lost chapter. A feeling that humanity once knew something and then forgot it. But perhaps Atlantis was not a beginning. Perhaps it was an ending. Not the birthplace of civilization, but a warning about civilization's final temptation. The temptation to believe that greatness protects you from consequence. The temptation to confuse power with virtue. The temptation to imagine that the sea, the earth, the gods, or history itself will never rise against you. And that brings us back to the title. Atlantis wasn't what you think. It may not have been a glowing paradise beneath the ocean. It may not have been a continent of impossible technology. It may not have been the secret source of all ancient knowledge. It may have been something more human. A story built from memory, disaster, politics, philosophy, and fear. A myth that absorbed real echoes from the ancient Mediterranean. A mirror in which Athens, and perhaps every civilization after Athens, could see its own possible ruin. The Minoans show us that brilliant island cultures existed. Santorini shows us that nature could destroy places with terrifying force. Archaeology shows us that lost settlements can be buried, drowned, forgotten, and found again. Plato shows us that the deepest ruins are not always made of stone. Sometimes they are moral. Sometimes a civilization begins to sink long before the water reaches it. So where was Atlantis? The honest answer is that we do not know, because no location has been proven. Maybe it was inspired by Thera. Maybe it carried memories of older floods or wars. Maybe it was purely Plato's invention. Maybe it was a philosophical warning wearing the mask of ancient history. But perhaps the more important question is not where Atlantis was. It is why we need Atlantis to have existed. Why do we keep searching the ocean for a lost civilization? Why do we keep imagining that the past hides a secret more powerful than anything we have found? Why does the idea of a vanished world feel so believable, even when evidence remains uncertain? Maybe because Atlantis gives shape to something we already know. That civilizations are fragile. That memory is fragile. That the sea can take a city. That time can take a name. That greatness can disappear so completely that one day it survives only as a story people argue about in the dark. And maybe that is why Atlantis still lives. Not because it has been found, but because it has never stopped warning us. Somewhere between Plato's words, the ash of Santorini, the ruins of Crete, the drowned coastlines of the world, and every map marked by hopeful hands, Atlantis remains suspended. Not fully history. Not merely fantasy. A question beneath the waves. And perhaps that is where it belongs. Because if Atlantis were ever found exactly as imagined, the mystery would end. But as long as it remains uncertain, it keeps asking the question Plato may have wanted us to hear all along. If even the greatest civilization can vanish, what makes us so sure ours cannot?